Yes,
All right.
we are recording. We're finally recording. Hey,
Come
oh my
on. What's going
gosh.
on?
All right. Well, okay, first of all, welcome everybody. We've had some technical stuff today. So it's funny that we are both needing to practice patience today. And so it's my absolute pleasure to finally say hello to somebody that we were talking about this earlier. We have been sort of star-crossed in our paths for so long in so many different ways. And to have him here on the show is such a joy for me. He is an incredible country music artist. He is somebody who's been and he's grew up where my daughter grew up, where I raised my daughter. I've crossed paths with his dad. I've crossed paths with his mom and his sister. And I actually had the opportunity to film him doing the national anthem for the San Diego Padres. Um, and really just kind of hang out and get to take some really great content of him just doing his thing, doing what he loves, doing what he's so fantastic at. So without further ado, from Nashville, Graham Nancarrow of the band Nancarrow.
What's going on? Thanks for having me.
Welcome to the Soul Wide Open podcast with your host, author, and certified trauma-informed coach, Michelle Renee.
Stoked
Yeah,
to be
I'm
here.
super pumped to have you here. Oh my gosh. Tell me about growing up here in San Diego because for you, you grew up with your your dad,
hmm
Lauren Nancarrow. He was an icon of our city. He was such a popular figure on local news here. He was somebody that was really, really, really well liked, highly respected. And he was a humble guy too. I had the opportunity to meet him once. He seemed to be like a really humble guy too. So for you growing up in San Diego, growing up with a dad that was a public figure, talk about that a little bit.
Well, best place one could ever ask to live and grow up in. I'm very grateful that I got to grow up there. Uh, uh, there's not, uh, growing up as a weatherman's son was always interesting, and thank God that movie came out after I was out of high school. There would have been a couple more fights, I reckon. Anchorman. But yeah, he was a humble man. He was the best dude I ever knew. I was thinking about him today when he used to take me to baseball games, and I was asking him, I'm like, what if we were listening to Sublime self-titled record, and I was like 12. I'm like, what does roaches in the pot mean? And he actually told me what it meant. I thought it meant like cockroaches in the toilet. I was still learning my my California roots and what they are. Uh,
Yeah. Especially
I don't know
North
what I'm talking
County,
about.
right? North County is just kind of this very cool, vibey spot, for people to, a lot of surfers, a lot of creative people end up here.
Yeah.
A lot of people on their spiritual, quest end up here. So
Yeah, it's a great place for all that spirituality, surfing, the that culture, that the counterculture, really. You got
I,
the self-realization fellowship, swamis, Beach Boys sing about it. It's like
yeah.
heaven on earth.
Well, it brings me to kind of a little bit about what you do now. You know, it reminds me, it's a town that is sort of this come as you are, and that
Yeah.
really seems to be the culture of where I raised Bria, where you grew up here in Encinitas in North County. It says sort of come as you are. I feel like that is very much a part of the country music culture as well. I mean, you see that today in some of the big names that are coming out that aren't your typical, the pretty boy or pretty girl
hmm
type sort of, country or pop country. You really see a lot of these artists today that are coming out that are the come as you are, and
Right.
the country music's wrapping their arms around them in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
talk
It's
to me about
shocking.
that.
Well, I'm happy for these new artists that wouldn't have probably been in country music like in the 90s or wouldn't have been accepted, Uh, it's interesting to see a genre like that go to accepting tattoos on the face and all this. Like that was what I grew up playing punk rock, so dudes with tattoos on their face, that meant something. And it also, like, what we understood is that once you do that, uh there's no being a pop star. You better already be big or have faith in your punk rock band, because uh it ain't only gonna piss mom off. But I love it. I think it's cool. The diversity is great, and I mean, I personally don't really listen to any new music, period, to be honest with you, and it's nothing against anybody new. I'm still I still love all the stuff that I grew up listening to, and um,
Me too.
you know,
Yeah, I'm a big old country music fan. That's what
yeah,
I gravitate to your music because it's such a, it is so reminiscent of the music of back when, sort of back in the day when I used to listen to country music with my mom. My mom grew up,
oh,
my mom would listen to Merle Haggard and,
yeah,
all the boys back then. And then I got into, even like Clint Black and sort of the Dwight Yoakams. And that's when I fell in love with country music, when it was like, all of those people coming up, Pam Tillis and, some of the
yeah.
older country music stars that I really, really fell in love with, Dolly Parton and all of them. But
Yep.
music for you, I want to kind of
Thank you
talk
for
a
the
little bit.
compliment, by the way.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, I love your, I'm obsessed with your music. So
Well,
yeah, I love it.
thank
I hope you stay in that lane because I think it's needed in music in general, but I really, really, really think it's needed in country music. And like you said, diversity is so important, I think, in every genre. And I love that you're sticking in this lane that you love so much and bringing that to people, is really important to have that diversity, for it to not all be this sort of, I hate to say it this way, but this sort of bubblegum poppy kind of country, and
right.
that now there's a lot of that soul country going on. And now we've got Hardy and he's bringing that rock vibe back
Hmm.
into country, and we need this sort of more of that old school country to stay in that mix and to stay relevant. I feel like
Right.
that's really important.
Right. It is. I mean, it's hard to stay relevant in today's world when you're into old school music, because the old stuff is old and it's things have evolved, and you don't want to you don't want to copy what somebody else was doing. I love Clint Black, Dwight, Merle Haggard. I actually just got off the phone with Clint's drummer who plays on all the GD Saints stuff. And he's so good, man. He's so damn good. You go in the studio, one take, one, two, every time, just like so animated and fun. And he's into it, and he loves the old school stuff, and that keeps me inspired to keep doing what I'm doing.
I love that. Okay, well, music for you. When did it start?
Hmm.
When did music really begin to be something that you were like, I don't see my life going in any other direction? When did you fall in love with music and becoming a musician?
The second I heard Elvis Presley, my pops was at a live shot. He used to do a live shot as much as he could to get out of the studio, and he'd take me. We were right down the street from our house, and I think I was causing trouble with my mom and my sister. So he's like, "Come on with me. We're gonna go to the live shot." And we pulled up to this barn, and the barn was blasted and hound dog. And I'm like, "Dad, what is this?" And then he went and for Christmas I got a Elvis CD and watched Hound Dog and all Elvis's movies and just fell in love. I mean, he got me. I mean, the Beatles were also right there in the beginning, and a lot of Motown, KBAS 95. I don't know if you remember that radio station, 94.9 used to be
I
KBAS
remember it.
95, and all that stuff got me in. Love it. Still love it.
It's funny you remember the moment you fell in love with music. I remember the moment. I always
Yeah.
loved music, but I remember the exact moment that I was so sold out on music. Like I was like, okay,
Uh-huh.
I was so crazy about it. And I
Who
walked
was
into
it?
my best friend's house and it was Earth, Wind and Fire.
Oh, rad. Yes.
Oh, I mean, I
What
heard that
song?
horn section and like I was just that was it for and then it went into Boss Skaggs and then from
Oh,
there it
boss.
just grew and then the singer-songwriter era just started happening and just took over for me. I'm still such a person that's all I love lyrics, lyrics are a really big, thing for me because they're just, people they're singing about your past and your present and your future and your family and our country and like
Yeah.
I just think it just is it's all of it is such it's just telling the story of all of our lives. And for me, music is, okay, breathing air, music, I can't really live without either one. That's how I feel about music.
Right. Me too. I was asking my friend the other day, I'm like, can you imagine the first dude that like realized like with a rock and he started making some sounds and then like how it evolved, how good it must have
Two
felt.
rocks
And like,
together.
yeah, and they probably couldn't really communicate, but once they got doing that, it's like, we recorded this song yesterday. It's called We Don't Have to Talk. And that's to me, music talks, and it always has for me. Not really necessarily poorly spoken, but I don't like to say a whole lot unless it's entertainment time or I'm really gelling with my friends or um, I think silence is yeah, that's why music is great for me.
Well,
And
and
you see a
sometimes
lot of musicians like that maybe on the spectrum or but when they get on stage, that's when they're in their element. Um, there's a guy named Paul Allen, my buddy John Bollinger, who plays guitar for the GD Saints. He was Paul Allen's guitar player for a while, and they'd go on. And Paul Allen was a Microsoft guy, so they'd go on his giant yacht, and John would be hired to be the band director. And I think Paul Allen was, obviously a very intelligent human being and definitely on the spectrum, and didn't like talking to people. So he had to throw these giant parties. It was part of the business, and so he would, and then he'd go on stage during the whole party and entertain. And that kind of that kept people at bay, and he was allowed to speak through what he loved doing. I thought that was kind of a cool thing, an experience that John had with people, because mental health in this business is not very
I love that you're
very
bringing this up because, that's a part of what we're going to dive into here. I know that, and you can talk about how, you really had to say goodbye to your dad
mhm,
at a pretty young age and
yeah,
how that affected you. How did you process that? Because a lot of different things in our lives and a lot of different traumas and losses can trigger us and
yeah,
and spin us out. And what was it that really, especially about music, because so many of us, we don't know how to express what it is that we're feeling. We don't know how to put into words what is going through our minds. And if I turn on the radio sometimes, it's like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I'm
yeah,
feeling, or that's exactly what I've been trying to express or say. And so music is incredibly, incredibly healing and therapeutic for me. And I mean, and all over the world. I mean, people use music in so many ways. Music therapy is out there. You think about, people who, when they go through a loss and they're doing a burial in different places all over the world, they get together and do a celebration, and it's all around music and dance and so many different things. But for you, how did you process the loss of your dad? And you can talk about how that happened, and what was it about music that really helped you in the healing process, because that's really, really important to share with everyone.
yeah. Uh, well, it hit us kind of from the side, when one night he was at the grocery store and went to pay, and he couldn't speak to the cashier. The words weren't coming out right, and by God, there was a neurosurgeon behind him, I believe, at the very least a doctor, and he recognized that it was not a good sign and offered to drive him home. And said my pops was very stubborn and self-sufficient, and he was like, "No, I'm driving home." And he got home, and we had to go to the hospital, and that night we learned that he had a lemon-sized tumor in his brain, and he had to go under the knife immediately. And so, I mean, the darkness that fell over our family on the floor at the ninth floor of the hospital or whatever, like just bawling, crying, because after these surgeries, the doctor said, we don't know how he's going to come out. We're going into his brain. We need to take it out. And so here's your moment, like that night, here's your moment to say what you need to say, because we don't know he's going to come out. And this is how awesome he was. He goes, all right, guys, after all the serious stuff, he goes, I'm going to come back with an English accent. And he went under the knife, and this is not funny at the moment, this is all serious. And we sit there for hours and hours. I think it was like 6 hours. And back at the hospital, and we come to see him in the morning, and he comes out of his anesthesia, and he goes, hello.
Hello, love.
Yeah, so we hadn't lost him, like that was such a cool moment. And back to how I took it, I mean, I didn't know how to handle it. And I didn't know I was spinning out of control, or I would be. I thought, at the moment, I thought I had it under control, and this, everything I could handle what was being thrown at me, my hero being terminally ill. And I'm so grateful. My mother, she is the most awesome woman I know. And she immediately got into action. She had dealt with her mom, who had a brain tumor, her father, who was in a really bad accident, and she had to take care of. I mean, and she knew exactly how to kick in. They went and put money down on a van, and we're going to travel and see the world in comfort as much as they could until it was too late, because the doctor gave them about a year. I probably processed it the best I could, but I was angry, pretty angry. And I felt misunderstood, I think, and then we had a paddle out for him, and there's just so much going on. He was so many people there. And I felt like I had to, mask. I just got a 6-pack and did what he would do, what I thought he would do, and was late to the paddle out and carried a lot of guilt. Not late to the paddle out, but paddled out last, and was just carried a lot of guilt and shame, and because I didn't know how to handle it. And I don't even know necessarily that was the wrong way to handle it, but from a spectator's perspective, which was my mom, she didn't like it, but
in that shame, like when you were saying you felt sort of guilt and shame, was that because, like, a lot of people can probably relate to this? Is it sort of around the idea that what could I have done to be a better son? What could I have done to not bring so much stress to my dad? Was any part of this brought on by any stress that I may have caused? Where did that guilt and shame come from? Because that is a big part of this. And that's the part, and we'll talk about this in a little while, releasing that instead of hanging on to that, because we can't expand and grow while we're still gripping and hanging on to something, right? Including anger and shame and guilt and all of those things. So talk about where that sort of came from for you, or those things, and how were you able to finally go, I can't keep gripping onto this anymore, because as long as I'm gripping and holding on to this, I can't open my hands and expand and let it go and open up my life to other things, as long as I'm, gripping onto this stuff so tightly. So can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. The guilt and shame, I've just always kind of had that issue. I've felt guilt about things that are stupid, and I'll bring it up since I was a kid. I'll be like, Mom, I did this, and she'd be like, where's the part where it's really bad? And it's like never comes up. I just naturally always had that. So it's been shaking. The guilt and shame thing has been a process over my whole life. I didn't feel really guilt for being a bad son or anything like that. We had our arguments, as fathers and sons do, but like our relationship was really good. I'd say most of the guilt and shame that came up was probably after he was gone, looking back and saying, well, there was that one night I was out partying with my friends, trying to forget everything because Dad said, like, just go live your life. At one point, he didn't want us sitting around the bed, just wallow out here. They say wallowing in sorrow around the fact that he's dying. There were times where he's like, go out, live your life. And, you know, in my mid 20s, early 20s, more like early 20s, it was, I was drinking. And that's what, since I was in school. And I don't mean like drinking every day, but I mean like when we went out and drank beers, me and the boys drank beers, and that's what we were doing. We were having a good time. And I thought that was what you do. And, you know, Elvis was my hero. It's not the best role model, but.
And what you freezing up real quick?
Looking back, that was where I'd say the guilt and shame came from. Okay. Yeah.
Let it reset. I don't know if it's internet or what on your end, but you're freezing up a little bit.
Okay.
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 Yeah, you're good.
Better? Cool.
Yeah.
I don't know what we missed, but
you were just talking about like, I mean, that's what you do, you know, when, you know, you've got, and me too, like in high school for me, I mean, I was an 80s rock person. Like I was, you know, I was AC/DC and Aerosmith and, you know, my high school was super rock and roll. And you know what comes along, you know what comes with rock and roll.
In the 80s too.
I was wild. I was super wild in the 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably how we have such a good
So
connection.
I totally get it. What you're saying. I'm like, okay, I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah, it's life. And I struggled with depression since I was a kid, and that didn't help at all. You know, putting the depressant in your body when you're dealing with depressing thoughts. It wasn't the answer. And I've had to search for other ways to find enlightenment. And through my mistakes, I met my band. You know, I found a higher power, a God of my understanding, and it's all loving, and it is everything that is good and beautiful. It's like meditation, yoga, surfing, my people. You know, I care about people, and a lot of times I care too much, and maybe about people that are not my people. And I'm a sensitive dude. I play music. That's what comes with the whole package as a musician. You know, we're sensitive, and it's a soul connection thing. When you, like you're talking about, when you, if someone sings a lyric that really resonates with your life, that's where the connection for me in music and people come in, if that makes any sense. So the answer to my like sorrow at the time was make music. And there were people that pushed me to write songs about pops, and I'm glad I did that, because it was like there were a couple songs that I wrote to him that were kind of like the letter that I never got to say to him in a song.
I love that.
You know?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think a really cool thing that you just mentioned that I didn't really think about, that is such a great point, is finding your people. And if you're stuck and you're not allowing yourself to go, to get out and have experiences, they're not going to show up at your door like a FedEx guy. You know what I mean? Like, you've got to figure out that way and the tools, and figure out the people, even if it's just one friend that you can go to dinner with, or one friend you can go out with, or go take yourself to go to a sporting event, whatever it is that you need to do to get yourself sort of out of that in a way, and give yourself the opportunity to meet people and socialize, and be able to give yourself the opportunity to meet the people that you're meant to meet, that are going to help you on your path. Like, that to me really stood out in what you just said, and was like a critical point for you in your journey towards healing and enlightenment and forgiving like you said, you've got to forgive yourself. You've got to,
Mhm.
you've got to get to the point where you're letting go of all of that pain and that shame and writing. And I tell people about journaling and writing stuff down all the time. Meditation's great. I've been doing it for over 20 years. I'm big
So
on
hard.
meditation. Oh, it's so hard. It's not what everybody thinks. Like, I mean, I must have to tell myself in 10 minutes of meditation, I'm telling myself 50 times to come back to my breath.
Yeah, right.
No, no,
10
no.
minutes of meditation, that's a lot.
Yes, and if you're not struggling, I mean, you're just a master. I don't know anybody who's does meditation. Is people have been doing it for years, and
Yeah.
they still have to, and that's part of it. It's this mastery of getting your mind to come back to your breath and not
Mhm.
let that freaking spinning hamster wheel just take over your life.
Yeah,
And so that's what meditation is for me, because that happens
totally.
all the time. I'm such a creative too, so I get it. But yeah, I love that you said that was the answer to my sorrow, and writing about it and being honest about how you were feeling and what you were writing. And I feel like that is such uh it's absolutely paramount in the healing process. No matter if you've lost somebody, if you've been in a car accident, you've been through a divorce, you've been through a kidnapping or a violent trauma, or
Mhm.
something as horrific as what my daughter and I survived, or domestic violence or child abuse, and you're really trying to get to a place in your life where you're healing from those things in your adult life. So there's so many different ways that people, or so many different things that people have, and events, traumatic events that people are really wanting to get past and evolve away from and out of into something more positive than just being identified as this person who's a victim or traumatized and in a state of trauma. And for me, one of the biggest things was writing and painting and
Mhm.
literally coming up with ways, not just meditation, but actual ways to get it out. I mean, I remember my daughter and we
Yeah.
set up a kickboxing bag and we pinned like masks to the kickboxing bag, and we beat the crap out of it, and we were cursing at it, screaming at it as if we wanted to, as if it was them. Like, everything you want to say to this
Mhm.
person, it get the anger out. Like, just it, whether it's writing, whether it's
Yeah.
jogging, whether it's kicking a kickboxing bag, whether it's going on a hike. And I used to pick up big rocks and pick them up and throw them down like 10 times, just to,
Really?
you've
Oh my
got to figure
gosh.
out ways to get it out. You know what I mean? You can't just let it
Yeah.
sit in the body
No,
and sit in the
exactly.
mind. You can't let it just sit there. You've got to like figure out the ways that are the best for you to
Mhm.
purge that stuff, to get that stuff out, to figure out how to not hang on to that, like we were talking about, and figure out what is going to help you expand instead of contract, and help you let that stuff go so you can free yourself to go really figure out how to live a better life, figure out a life that
Right.
isn't going to be all stuck in this trauma. And
Yeah.
that to me is, that's the win. That's the big win for me. Is I I'm a seeker of how can I become the best version of myself? What are the things that I could do that are going to help me propel myself towards more healing, towards more
Mhm.
gratitude, towards more joy, towards more adventure, towards more, where do I want to propel myself it towards, that is
Yeah.
going to help me live the life that I want to live. And for
Mhm.
you, it sounds like music was that absolute catalyst for you.
Music was it, and it still is it. I also really learned at the age of 19 about helping others. Um, when like I get, as we all do, as we're talking about it, I get stuck in my head sometimes. And what I learned at 19, when I came into the situation that I did, it was that when we want to get outside of ourselves, we help others. And however that is, whether it's writing a song and sharing it with somebody who wants to hear it, uh, playing a show for no money, but doing it because you love it and you love to see the smile on somebody's face. and brighten up their whatever they're going through, because we're all
Yeah.
having this human experience. And
How
it's
has
just it's
spirituality played a role? Because what you're saying, helping others, like
mhm.
the things that you're saying they're from a more evolved place, and somebody who is definitely a seeker like I
Mhm.
am. That's where, when we continue to seek and we continue to be open to kind of whatever you want to call it, God, the divine spirit, the
Yeah.
universe is wanting to open us up to. How did you end up on that path? How has that been a part of your life? Because music to me is very spiritual. It's like you said, it is a total soul connection for me.
Mhm.
How is that the spiritual part of that, and marrying that with music and healing, and now to where you've become a man that's kind of evolved in that way? How has that played a role?
Well, it was the whole reason I found spirituality is because I was desperately seeking to, live my life happily and not die. So I was grasping for a life raft, and it came in the form of me listening to a gentleman speak about his experiences with drugs and alcohol. And when he said that he played music, and I saw the light in his eyes, um, he was we're cut from the same cloth in different eras. And I went up and spoke to him. I said, dude, I really like what you said, and I'm in here for 30 days and it's going to look good for the courts. And I screwed up, and luckily no one was hurt. Anyways, I gave him my Misled Citizen punk rock CD from right after high school. We're in high school. We made a record out in San Francisco, a punk rock record. And I gave him a copy of that because he was into punk rock. He had mentioned it. And he ended up, being my bass player for Nancarrow, getting all the rest of the dudes to be on board. Ron, the drummer, Russell, Lap Steel, uh, Tommy Andrews, and Buzz Campbell, guitar players. It's like, if I didn't mess up, I would have never been shown that gift of love.
Amazing.
Yeah. And so spirituality came in that form. I was an atheist growing up. I'd pray, and then then I started listening to Bad Religion, which is not what you think it is or what one would think it is.
Yeah.
I started listening to Bad Religion, and he was coming from a scientific perspective and has a PhD. So I was like, oh, he's right. And he wasn't necessarily saying that there is no God. That's not it. I think punk rock challenges you to think for yourself, and that was ultimately what they were doing. But like I was saying, I kind of just stopped believing that there was a God. I was into punk rock, and after that accident, and being taught that a God doesn't have to be a blonde dude that's up in the clouds judging the hell out of everyone. Um,
Yep.
it can be your own understanding of God, and that at least opened the door for me to take the step towards believing in something bigger than myself. Because I was told, if you don't believe in something bigger than yourself, then you're saying you're it. That's I'm not God. So I had to just like humble down, and believe, and just take that step of faith. And it's taken years to evolve, and I'm still evolving today. And you know, God is everywhere, and I have a lot of control over my thoughts and my feelings more than I think. So I just put faith in that God and try and let him speak through me.
Well,
Might sound
this
like Joe Rogan here, but
well, that brings up a really good point. Like, for those of us who are open to that, and I grew up, atheist, kind of atheist as well. There was no talk of God or spirituality or any of that growing up in my household at all. And I grew up in a
Mhm.
very violent home and left home when I was 15. So I had a different kind of an upbringing. And one of my best friends in fifth grade was a Christian, and they introduced me to the concepts of Jesus and Christianity. And I decided I wanted to adopt that for a little while. And then I just didn't really understand it. And I was just like, I have a lot of questions that no one can
Yeah.
answer. And I don't really believe in this. And this sounds odd to me. And it just wasn't necessarily the fit for me. It's a
Mhm.
fit for a lot of people, which is great if that works for them. It just personally didn't really resonate or work for me until I really began to, like you, I began to really study. I ended up taking a college course. I ended up getting my GED and going to college and studying world
Cool.
religion. And I became fascinated by different world religions and ended up going to a Buddhist monastery called, that was in the tradition of Thich Nhat Hanh in the Zen Buddhist tradition in Escondido. It's called Deer Park, actually. And so I
Awesome.
ended up starting to go there and really learning about mindfulness and gratitude and meditation and all of these things that really did resonate with me, even though I don't really necessarily I don't really do organized religion, but those
Mhm.
philosophies and the philosophies around mindfulness and the philosophy and the living your life from a standpoint of gratitude and being very, very mindful really, really resonated with me. So that's where I really began to shift in my spiritual on my spiritual path. For a while I was kind of not really sure where I
Uh-huh.
was meant to land, and like you, I ended up going, oh, I could this can just be something that I feel. I
Mhm.
have no attachment to whether or not anybody else feels it, or if I belong to something or someone else or some group or anything. I just don't have any attachments to that at all. I
Right.
You know what I mean? I
I
believe
love
in
that. Yeah.
something bigger, and I believe in, I believe that there is a soul, and there is a calling of the soul. But like what you were saying a little while ago, when we start to see, and a lot of people start to feel this, and then they don't listen to it.
Yeah.
They
Oh, yeah.
ignore it. They ignore it, right? And
Yeah.
that I feel like that is the thing that keeps you stuck. When you don't listen to that inner calling, to that voice of the soul, to that sometimes I just wrote a post about this and a poem about it the other night, that
Cool.
sometimes it comes as a whisper just after midnight. Like
Yeah.
if you're
Love
not
that.
listening and paying attention,
Gotta
you're
be
gonna
tuned
miss
in.
it, right?
Yeah.
But you've gotta listen and take action when it's an exchange. It's a
Right.
conversation, right?
That's well put. Yeah. It's exactly what it is. And I have to be spiritually fit enough to be able to receive and be awake to hear that message when it comes, because it could be subtle, really subtle and quick.
Yeah.
And, you know, I love
Yeah.
that. It's so
And
true.
have the courage to move in whatever direction that is telling you to go. Like, I've had some
Right. Shift.
oh,
Yeah.
man, and sometimes you don't understand it. Like, I didn't understand why I was being called to drive by myself to Alaska, into the
Wow.
Alaskan wilderness alone for 9 days, and
Whoa. That's so gnarly.
yeah, it was and it was like 6 months after the kidnapping. I was afraid of my own shadow. I was like, and I'm arguing, going, "Nope, not doing that." And this thing,
Uh-huh.
whatever anybody wants to call it, this calling, this tug, this whisper, this soul tug was saying, "Do you trust me?" And I was
Uh-huh.
like, "Yes."
Wow.
And it was saying, "Then you're going to do this." And I had no understanding of what it was going to mean. Saying yes to that and going,
Mhm.
"Okay, I'm gonna trust, I'm gonna go. I have hardly any money, a car with 104,000 miles on it, and I'm
Yeah.
gonna fly my daughter up there, drop her off at her grandma's, come back and drive up there and not have any clue what this even means." It it was
Wow.
the most incredible healing journey that I could have ever imagined. It is what kicked off not only the healing from the kidnapping, but the healing from my violent childhood and getting
Mhm.
out in nature and reconnecting with God, spirit, divine energy, whatever you want to call it, was the absolute catalyst to every single part of my healing that has led me to where I am today, was saying yes to that. And that
I
is the
love
thing
that.
that keeps people stuck. They might hear it, but they're too afraid to trust it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I understand that. I personally have found that a lot of people do not like to be told what to do. And
Mm.
I think this is more of a little universe wink. It's not saying you got to do it, but trust that path. I didn't know you went through that, Michelle. That's a drive into Alaska is heavy in itself.
Yeah.
It's pretty phenomenal that you made it out to the other side and you're smiling on the other side of this computer screen.
I
It's
am, and
beautiful. I love it.
I camped the whole way almost. I only
You
spent one night
camped?
in the ho I camped the whole time.
Oh my gosh, that's so rad.
It was
Sounds like
so
something I
rad.
would do.
You
I
just don't
love
you've
that
gotta
about
get
you.
I'm gonna send you a copy of my book, 9 Days. It's my memoir,
I
and it's about the road trip, and it's about the
oh,
healing that happened, and it's about the people that I met on this road trip that are it's mind-blowing what happened on this road trip. I now know why I was being called to do that. It's so crystal
that's
clear to me
incredible.
now.
Send
Yeah,
it.
it's
I'd love to
incredible.
read
I'll
it.
send it to you.
I
So
kinda did
text
one of those journeys. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, text me your address and I'll send it to you
Okay.
I'll send it to you over the weekend. But yeah,
Okay, perfect.
I think the big key thing is, and we'll wrap this up because I know we're both super busy, but
No, you're cool.
I think the key thing is for you and for me and people like us, whatever their healing process is, when that calling is coming
Yeah,
to break through that threshold of fear and follow that and not allow the fear to be the thing that rules your life and not don't let that be the thing that you follow more than you follow the calling on your soul, because that really is the choice, right? We're either allowing ourselves to follow the calling of fear, or we're allowing ourselves to follow the call of divine or spirit or whatever you want to of the universe that is guiding you in a direction that, even if you don't understand it and you don't know what the outcome is going to be, it is the path of purpose, if that makes sense.
absolutely. Fear, fear is a big one. Fear is a
Yeah.
big one, and the opposite of fear to me, I guess, would be faith. And the
Yeah.
reason I say that is because when I'm fearful, I'm in doubt, and it's no way to live. I understand. I actually heard this the other day. I read it. There's two fears that we are born with as humans, naturally, natural fears: the fear of falling and the fear of loud sounds. And that's why a baby cries when something's loud, and we naturally put our hands back when we fall. Everything else, from what I learned, is totally learned by our surroundings, what we tell ourselves, what other people tell us. It's all learned. So that means that every other fear other than falling, which I've done plenty of times, and loud noises still piss me off. And I'm next to the drummer way too often. So like I understand that it resonated so much because everything else is totally inherited by our human experience, and I don't have to carry that with me.
Yeah.
Like it's a big old journey, ain't it?
I agree. I agree. For me, it's either fear or trust. Like, I'm going to
Trust,
trust,
yes,
man. I am
yeah,
going to trust and move forward and not let fear stop me. And
right,
I feel like that's a great message. You didn't let fear stop you going into the music industry, and that there has to be a lot of fear attached to that for so many people. It's
yeah,
competitive. It's you moved to Nashville. You
mhm,
have no idea where this journey is going to lead you in music. None of us know where this journey is going to lead us in any
right,
way, shape, or form. We have no idea, but
yeah,
it stops a lot of people from actually discovering their purpose. It stops a lot of people from actually discovering what a healed life looks like, what a life without fear and a life without hanging on to all of that pain and being angry at our kidnappers. I just had a
yeah,
conversation with one of our kidnappers last night on the
no
phone.
way,
You won't
whoa,
believe what's happening in this situation. That's for another time. We'll talk offline
whoa,
next time you're in San Diego. We need to go grab a drink. But yeah,
okay, yeah, sure,
it's incredible what's happening full circle with this
yeah,
person. I'm excited to hopefully in the future be talking to him
mhm,
and interviewing him and us sharing a message of his healing journey that started when we wrote him a letter in prison. and
Wow.
there's just a lot of really cool stuff going on. But I would have never have gotten there. I would never know this level of sort of unconditional love
Yeah.
or empathy or understanding, and I would never be able to stand firm in those things and let those things lead my life if I did not listen. Like what you said, if I didn't listen and I just followed fear instead, I would
Hmm.
never ever know what this feeling is like in this moment that I'm in my life right now, where where literally love and understanding and gratitude just rule my existence. So I want to encourage everybody out there that to find the time to in the space that wherever it might, it could be in nature, it could be in your kitchen while you're doing dishes, just kind of try to figure out how to listen to that still small voice that sometimes it's a thundering voice, but most of the time it's pretty subtle, and follow it. Don't let fear rule your life, because that is the thing that's going to keep you stuck.
Yeah, it's
I believe
crippling.
that's the thing that's going to keep you stuck.
Absolutely. Live a
Yeah,
life free from fear, my friends.
my friends.
Trust the
Hey,
divine path.
that's the divine path. I agree with that. So tell me and everybody what's happening with you. I know you've been playing a lot of gigs. You just said you recorded a song last night. Do you have
Three
an album,
songs.
another
Yeah.
album coming out? What's going on? Where can we see you? Where can we get your stuff? Where can we connect with you?
Uh, Connect with me online, Spotify, iTunes, Instagram. I'm slowly getting on the TikTok thing. My next show is a private one with I've got the band Face to Face with me, and I'll be doing a punk rock set for an old company called Bad Boy and Life's a Beach, and my buddy Ricky Johnson, who was my pop's best friend. They're throwing a party. He called me up. He goes, "Hey, we're all dying. We're all going to die soon. We want to throw a party, and we want you to play your punk rock set for 30 minutes. What do you think?" I'm like, "Hell yeah, let's go." So
Let's
that's the
go.
next one. And then let's see what we got. There's a couple shows in Texas coming up this year. Um, nancarrowmusic.com is where you could find all that information. And I add shows weekly. We recorded
Well,
those 3 songs yesterday. So that's like, I believe 8 or 9 that we're sitting on now. I'll probably do a record with like at least 15 songs because I like
perfect.
doing records. It's the old school way. I, I like that.
I have a record player at my house and I still play vinyl.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Vinyl's the best.
I love vinyl. Even I like hearing the little pops. I like putting the needle in the groove. I
The
like it
groove.
all.
Yeah, me
I,
too.
s-
Me
I
too.
still love that to this day. I still love that.
Yeah,
Well,
we should
thank you.
you'd love the record collection that's going on. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Mm.
Thank you for having me. Such
Thank
a
you
blast.
so much for today. I mean, thank you for your patience with our little tech issues that we had. Thank you
Of
for
course.
being open and being vulnerable today and being so
Mhm.
honest and sharing, your story and your journey and how you ended up going from, somebody who was not living his authentic life and who was running from certain things and who was living in guilt and shame for a while, and how
Yeah.
music really helped you to heal and how you're now living with your soul wide open. Hopefully that's the goal of this entire show, is to inspire people to go live with your soul wide open and enjoy the time that we still have left here. Those of us, I always say this because we survived the kidnapping, but guess what, I'm still here. What am I going to do with that time? How am I going to make
Right.
that count? How am I going to make
Mhm.
that matter? That's what this show is all about. We want to inspire people to go make it count. You know what I mean?
I love it. Michelle, you inspired me for having me and talking to me about this. Sometimes it's not easy to be open, but
I know.
um,
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
yeah,
Um,
likewise.
yeah. So anyway, you guys, if you like the show, hit that like button, share it, love it, subscribe, do all the things. Thank you so much, Graham Nancarrow, for being on the show today. And I will see you all on the next one.